Hi, everyone. I'm Gwen Callahan, the co-director of the HPLFF Film Festival, and I am joined by a multitude of filmmakers from our streaming shorts block 5. We have Team Amelis, a creative group that works together to do some really cool stop motion films. Their film was The Ecstasy at the End of the Sea. We have Alexandria Greeling from What's This? John Thomas Dixon from Patch. Robert Flowers of Blood Money, and we have John Warren and Shane Day from The Neighborhood at the End of the World, which actually also happened to win our Best Short Film Award this year at the festival. So welcome everyone, and thank you for being with us.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us. Hi, everyone.
Hello.
Hi.
Hello.
Hi. Hi. I'm gonna just kind of round robin with some questions for each of you, and then we'll go from there. And I'll keep an eye on our HP Lovecraft Film Festival Discord server to see if anyone pops up in there with any questions as well. But all of your films are so wonderfully different and fantastic. I'm gonna start with the stop motion film, The Ecstasy at the End of the Sea. I see you've got your protagonist hanging out with you on your lap, Michael. And I was actually wondering how big he was, because there are some of the details in the film are just, I was imagining them to be just so tiny, like on the book and like the barnacles on the crab legs at the end and things like that. Can you talk a little bit about the production design and like what it took to make all of those props?
Sure. That one was particularly painful. It was the first one we did remotely with the studio. We didn't have internet access. We had an all new group of folks helping us build that had never done this before. I mean, I've done it before, so I can explain the stuff. But yeah, there was a number of problems came in. Like our main creature, the diving suit. Everybody loved the diving suit idea because it was a fun costume to make. And I described this design that I drew it out for them. The person who was making the armature said, "Yeah, it's not gonna be that hard to make." The person making the costume was like, "Yeah, it's not gonna be that hard to make." And it turned out to be a nightmare, not only to make, to assemble, but oh my God, it was a nightmare to animate that thing. It was so complicated. And all of it works together. It's not like separate puppets. The whole puppet can do all of that stuff. So it was a nightmare. But yeah, it was a lot of detail and a lot of crazy stuff. I thought the ship looked really beautiful. We had a couple of artists come in that made the ship for us. They'd never worked on anything like this before, and I gave them some vague description of what it would look like, and putting barnacles and stuff on it. And we used like moss for seaweed and things like that. So it was a lot. Anyway, let me introduce Jeffrey, who's a writer, and Max, who is our main animator. Although he did secondary animation on this film, follow-up animation after the project was completed. So he's our main animator usually.
Awesome. Nice to meet you all, and like fantastic job on this film. You guys also tend to enter the Lovecraft Under the Gun 72-hour film contest every year. And this piece was an entry in 2023? Or 2022? 2022, okay.
Or 2020 maybe. I can't remember now. It's been at least 2 years.
That whole period from 2020 to 2023 is kind of a blur, and it's time is a flat circle that folded up on itself and disappeared into a void. But what I'm curious to know, like, what changes you made after the piece was done in 3 days, and then what did you add and change after that?
Actually, a lot. This is a film that we added probably the most to of any of our films, because I really wasn't satisfied with, because I don't want to go on for a long period, all the hardships we had during that film race. It was one of the worst film races for me personally. It was just the animation computer chain with photographing was broken. We had to do a lot of stuff manually that took hours. We lost almost an entire day of work on the original film. But yeah, so we had to do a lot to clean it up and to redo stuff. But all the sets, we didn't create any more sets or do any more puppets or anything like that. All that stuff was from the original. So we created all that stuff from scratch.
Nice. Excellent. I'm going to hop over to Alexandria because you also have kind of a free floating or severed head switch up in your film. With What's This, it is a really satisfying kind of revenge taken on a porch pirate that happens to live in an apartment building. But can you tell us kind of the genesis of the idea and how you accomplish some of the effects in this?
Yeah, so yeah, when we talked about this in Portland too, I think what I had previously talked about is how I came across the videos of people retaliating with glitter bombs, and that I thought that was so funny. I was actually really getting a kick out of watching all those videos and thought it was so funny. It was just impressive that people were going on their way to make that. So when I was writing this short, I just was like, how cool would it be to have, get revenge on these thieves with taking their bodies and chewing their heads off, and there's this decapitated head that just keeps coming back and back and back to take revenge on thieves. But yeah, and then with the effects, everything was all practical except for obviously the scene where you see my head. I was not supposed to be the creature actor in this at all. I really would have preferred not to be. Unfortunately, with everything that was happening in the world, COVID did hit my creature actor 24 hours before production. So I had to jump in and play that role. Would have loved to have her play it because she was so wonderful. But hopefully I'll get her for a future project. But yeah, we did everything as practical as possible with the taking her down with the long hair. I have an obsession with long hair. Samara is my forever favorite. I guess she's a scary creature. I think she's lovely. And so I really wanted to add that hair effect. And I realized, like, during the being around everyone at Lovecraft in Portland, that it almost did kind of give a bit of a octopus tentacle energy when it did wrap around her, where it just like grabbed her so quickly. And we actually shot that all in reverse. So that's how we got that effect. And then I did all the prosthetics and stuff and was actually really chewing on my lead's neck. Thankfully, we're very close friends. So, and it was also during a heat wave in LA. So it was brutal. And I did ruin my carpet because we used about a gallon of blood. So, but all for the love of film. So it was worth it. And I am so glad that everyone has enjoyed it so far.
One of the things I enjoyed as a fan of the story. I don't remember what book it's in, but it's about it's like the
girl with the green ribbon.
The green velvet ribbon.
Yeah.
Where the woman has the velvet ribbon that has no beginning and no end, and her husband's like, "What's the deal?" He's like, "Never talk about it."
Yes. I love that book growing up so much. So that was definitely an ode to that fable, because with the green scarf, absolutely. So I'm glad that people caught on to that a little bit, because that's an amazing story. So haunting as a kid to read it, but wonderful. So yeah.
So at the risk of babbling a little bit, Brian's older sister during the 70s always wore a scarf around her neck. And he asked her, "Val, why do you always wear a scarf?" And she said, it keeps my head on. If I take it off, my head will fall off. You want to see? And he'd be like, "No."
Yeah. He mentioned that too, and I was like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. I had no idea. I hope that this wasn't triggering to your childhood.
He's not traumatized by it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm going to move on to John Thomas Dixon and your film Patch. It's actually funny that the more I do these Q&As, it seems like there's always some kind of thread that works its way through all of the films, and it's coming out to being like there's like some kind of puppeted creature or part of a body. So with Patch, it's we follow, it's silent, there's no dialogue, which is amazing, and I love the setting. It's so isolated and you really feel the cold kind of howling around the building. And this poor butcher has to patch this hole in the roof because his boss is I don't know, a prick and didn't do it. Because if I was that guy, I'd be like, that's like above my pay grade. Like,
Yeah,
you
I'm
need
just
to get
gonna
somebody
leave.
else there
Yeah.
to do it. I'm gonna leave. But no, he like goes up and he tries to patch this roof, and then horrible things happen to him. But there's clearly some allegorical statements in here and some symbolism. Can you talk a little bit about well, you pulled it out earlier if you want to pull it
Yeah,
out
okay.
again.
I'll
How
grab-
you accomplished the look of the creature.
Yeah, so this is what was notably just called Patch on set because we couldn't come up with a better name. So this was our Patch puppet that my brother built. And yeah, it had some crazy design elements. It's like on springs. My brother just, I was like, hey, I know you've never made like a puppet for a film before, but I love your sculpture. So can you make a puppet? And he crushed it. And yeah, I think this film felt like because it's so like on the page even it felt so like it's out of the realm of anything any of my friends had ever done, anything I had ever done. And then it wasn't until my brother sent me like the first ever photo of the puppet skeleton moving where I was like, oh, like we can actually make this film, you know? And it's one of those reasons I love just like practical effects in film in general is just like there's something tangible to that that you can really feel on the screen in ways that I feel like is really lacking in a lot of at least like popular media nowadays. So it was really cool being able to like tap into practical effects and a little bit of miniature work, like dabbling in that world was really fun. But yeah, I think every element down to the puppet, down to miniatures was like maximizing the atmosphere of isolation was kind of our goal, trying to with the weather, with the snow, with everything, trying to just isolate the main character in this world as a lone butcher during a blizzard. Yeah.
Well, you mentioned miniatures. What part did you use miniatures for?
So the exterior shot of the slaughterhouse with the snowstorm coming all around it, that was a miniature I had built. Yeah. Which was such a lucky experience because I had built it and I was like, all right, now I got to figure out the fake snow aspect of this. And then a blizzard came through Tennessee because I'm from Nashville, Tennessee, and a blizzard came through for 7 days. So I had the perfect window, just like, all right, we're going to use the elements and I'm just going to put this in the snow in my backyard and just go for it. So it was just a one-man band, me like sprinkling snow over over the set while my camera is like icing over and I'm having to like defrost the lens. So
Oh my
yeah.
goodness.
Uh-huh. A wild
Hey.
experience.
Wow. Can you talk a little bit about like the shots, the angles used in some of your shots? Because it seems like there's kind of a progression of we're kind of close in and then expanding out. Was that a
Yeah.
conscious choice that's kind of happened organically?
A little bit of both, I would say. I think definitely framing wise, I wanted everything to be center just to like because it's so short and because it's so someone told me it felt very dreamlike in a way. I wanted everything to just be very central so you're always kind of in that perspective and there's nowhere to really look away from anything. But as far as like going tight, yeah, I think it was finding moments to isolate with our main character. You don't hear his name in the film, but we called him Martin. But like to be in Martin's world and then to leave that world or to be in Martin's world and then see how massive the world is around him was very fun to play with. And we had a ton of fun sort of mentally mapping the angles too. Like there were moments where to make the ladder fall, for example, we had to put the camera at like an extreme Dutch angle so it looked as if Martin was up straight and then he's actually canted on the ladder. So it's a lot of mental math, but like doing some stunt work with the camera in a way. So like faking the fact that we didn't have all the proper resources to make a stunt like that work, but sort of tricking camera to make stuff like that work was really fun and like some of the most like the biggest challenges I've had to solve as a director up to this point were happened in while shot listing this one. So
Nice. I really like how you're kind of starting in, like the abattoir, like the kill room, for lack of a
Mhm.
better word. And, he's like pushing all the blood towards the drain, and it's kind of close, and you're like, oh, that's so gross. But then when he goes out into the main area, and you would think that like, oh, it feels safer, but because of how expansive it feels and dark, it feels even more like creepy.
Yeah, it's definitely like the closer you're the further away you get from the machinery, you feel like it'd be safer, but it gets so like lonely and isolated. That was something my producer and I really talked about, was like the whole idea of sort of like the sounds of machinery and the sounds of just a slaughterhouse, and how like no matter where you are, you're very much just like not safe or not in like a great environment, and the atmosphere is just so oppressive, I feel like, no matter where you are in that location. Yeah.
Super creepy. Not my type of job, for
Yeah.
sure. I prefer to be well lit and with people.
Yes.
So Robert, speaking of well lit with people, Robert's Blood Money is something we kind of, I guess it could be referred to as a daytime horror, because most of the events happen during the day, like out in bright, sort of normal lighting, and
Yep.
not in an obviously creepy milieu. But this is an interesting kind of conversation in your film about wealth wealth inequality, and just kind of like what we're willing to give of ourselves in order to scrape by, while corporations are literally like sucking the lifeblood out of people.
Yes, that was the idea.
Can you talk a little bit about the selling your blood aspect, because that just seems like the last thing that you would want to resort to make money, other than like if you are into prostitution or something like that. But it just seems kind of like the last frontier as far as being desperate.
100%. So many years ago, I went to a plasma center to sell my blood, sell plasma. And they give you a debit card just like in the movie and stuff afterward. But I was amazed about how 9 to 5-ish this lab type setting felt. Like people were just sitting at their machines, and the blood is just getting sucked out of them and put back in, and the plasma extracted. And it was like, you read a book, you listen to music, and I needed to put gas in my car, and I really needed the money. It was definitely one of those desperate times here in LA. And I'm a big guy, so they put the setting on high, and I could feel my life force just fade. It was like irising down, and I barked up for help, and they're like rushed to my station and turned the machine off, and that was that was the roughest $75 I had ever earned for that. And so that was the inspiration for the story about this guy down on his luck who's basically trading, trying to get back into the game, as he says in the movie, trading his what most people do, trade time for money, trade your life force for money for your corporate overlords. And I think I was pretty pretty clear on the predicament he was in, and then he kind of just spirals out of control with that mentality. So being so desperate and enough to project some things that weren't even true, which we find out in the movie. So yeah.
Yeah, I thought that was pretty interesting twist on, I guess, setting him up as an unreliable narrator in a way.
Yes.
Which then makes me think about the ending, and like, is that actually what's happening, or is that just a dying brain dream that he has?
I leave that up to the viewer. I mean, in my head, that was kind of like the monster inside the corporate buildings that surround us all. That was what that was supposed to be. And those tentacles are kind of what takes his lifeblood. So, part metaphor, definitely unreliable, narrator point of view. But yeah, pretty fun.
And then with your film, I was just rewatching it earlier. I was noticing that you also have some interesting camera angles during certain times.
Yes.
So when he seems to be less comfortable, it seems like the angles get a little more extreme versus when he feels like he's going to be okay, then they kind of level out.
Right. Those are all deliberate choices. I wanted each angle on any character to be a specific choice. And Dutch, and with the wide aspect ratio, which is super over the top, it's like beyond anamorphic. It's like 2.7, so it's pretty obnoxiously wide, and we did that on purpose. And then canting the camera and every opportunity we had, even like some single shots on him, looking down on him. We were looking down on him when we first see him at the beginning, and then when he's talking to his friends, we're down angle too. And they're talking back at him and also at a Dutch angle. Those are all deliberate choices for kind of his unstable world and his unstable mental disposition at the time the movie takes place. So my cameraman had a lot of fun with it. It was always like, wait, what are we doing, Dutch? I'm like, yes, Dutch, more Dutch. And so that was a fun way to shoot.
I'm gonna hop over to John and Shane and talk about the neighborhood at the end of the world where we have our main character, mom, who's essentially torturing dad because she doesn't think that he's actually him, because it seems like there's been a neighborhood full of pod people, for lack of a better word. And she's just kind of, it's a nice kind of look at what paranoia and fear will make us do to somebody we ostensibly love. And I'm noticing with your film too, like there's a lot of angles that are kind of, or camera shots that are kind of close up with the actors' faces very illuminated, with the background kind of disappearing into darkness. And can you talk about the connection between the story and the way that you filmed those scenes?
Yeah, I think primarily there was one of the choices in the way that we shot the film was that there would be the way the camera's moving in the space is sort of meant to give this feeling of never really certain where to look or what to be looking at. So as a result, there is a lot of camera movement because anything is possible with what is actually happening. But when we started to employ the canted angles, I think I tried to be deliberate in where it's introduced, and it was, as much as everything's starting to go haywire, we're actually maintaining a sort of even plane between them, because the power dynamic is that she's above him, but by doing the canting, there is still something that's happening between them. There's still an intimacy despite the sort of madness, the obvious separation of the horror element. But I still wanted to maintain that they really are a happy couple. And that's actually, oddly enough, ironically, why she's doing it. You know, why she's torturing him is because she's in love with him, and to her, it's an imposter. So how dare you? But because we know the ending, the actual thing is that the canted angle for me, at least, like I say, was to kind of maintain this element of intimacy between them that she's missing, but we're witnessing, you know.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And then I there's the moment when like Jetson appears in the basement, and like we kind of get the low camera angle kind of from his point of view as well.
Mhm. And I'm sorry, when are you referring to the real Jetson or the other Jetson, probably when it comes down?
I guess
Right.
when he comes
Oh,
down in his pajamas when she's in the beginning, or I guess when she's starting the torture process, and he comes down and is like talking to her, and you get that like kind of long far away shot of them from his point of view, but it's very low. And like I
right.
might be bring this wrong, like I feel like it's kind of like between his legs.
Yeah, you're actually right. You're entirely right. He walks through camera, and then we're seeing it from his, yeah. Um, Funny enough, I'll be honest, I may forgotten what my intention was there, because now that I've seen it with an audience, I feel like it's now there's a sort of punchline that it kind of provides, which is it starts very intense with her and the torturing, but then suddenly there's this young boy, and I suppose that angle is kind of offering an opportunity to take a step back and reconnect with, no, I don't want to be cliche and say innocence, but ignorance in a way. Like now suddenly we're taking a step back and we're like, well, what is this? And some of the audiences we watched it with tend to giggle, funny enough, at that moment. And I really appreciate that, because it's something that I didn't realize was a breaking of tension. And so I'm just going to say that was intentional. But yeah, like I think it's offering a sense of connection to, again, this lack of knowing what's going on, this ignorance, essentially.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And can you talk about the setting? Like we talk about, it seems like the suburbs, New York City always gets destroyed and Los Angeles always gets destroyed, but then every now and then we get these kind of quieter, more slice of life films that are set in the suburbs where things are, not as they seem, like Blue Velvet and The Burbs and things like that. Is there something about the suburbs that creeps you out?
Yeah, yeah, actually. I still can't explain why this happens, but I genuinely have a very uncomfortable feeling when I see images of the suburbs, or if I'm for some reason visiting the suburbs to see somebody or what, I actually do get anxiety. And I don't know what that's based on, and it's been since I was a kid, but I do tend to think it has something to do with the homogeneity of the environment. Everything seems so perfectly, parceled out, yet everyone's actually hiding in their own bubble, and the community doesn't actually exist. So everyone's living together, but there's no actual sense of community. And I suppose that terrifies me. It terrifies me to imagine that we could all live so close together, yet have absolutely no sense of community. And I think that's kind of the root of it for me.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah.
Speaking of fears, I want to go back to Alexandria. I have a question for you. Because it seems like a lot of times our art and film kind of help us work out or process some kind of trauma or deep-seated fear. And I was wondering if you have a fear of like either severed heads or decapitation, or if there was, that's just a coincidence that that's in your film, or does it have any relation to any of your personal foibles?
I don't know if I'm necessarily scared of decapitated heads. I am scared of the dark, and I still am scared of the dark. I tried to make, I didn't intend to DP this, and I ended up unfortunately having to, and so it is quite a dark set film, except for sometimes when my lighting is very, very bright pink and lime green, which if anyone's seen it, they'll know what I'm talking about. But yeah, I do have like a thing. I think what stemmed from it a little bit is and like there is a deeper rooted part of even Sophia Valentine, the main character, is that she didn't get like presents growing up, and she didn't come from a family that was a gift giving family. So as she got older, the way she kind of coped with that was stealing. And I also kind of dealt with that as I'm the oldest of 6 siblings, so that was pretty like tough on young parents growing up. And then kind of it's not, I guess, related so much to horror. It's just, I think, something that follows you through childhood into adulthood. I do not steal anything, though. I'm actually have a gigantic fear of stealing things. Even if I've like on accident taken something, I will go back and be like, I'm so sorry, I did not pay for this. Like, I do have a fear of stealing things. But so that was kind of where that came from a little bit. It's like, not getting everything I wanted as a child, because, you know, we didn't have the sources to, and kind of building out Sophia's character as that a little bit, where she also didn't. So she kind of, on the outside seems lovely, but in the inside, she's not a great person. She's kind of, yeah. So
Messed up.
yeah, she's not great. Yeah. So.
And it struck me too, like at the end of your film, kind of during the credit scenes, we see a bunch of different women wearing scarves all around. And
Yeah.
it's kind of a, can you talk a little bit more about that? Like, what was your maybe hidden intent or intent with showing those?
Yeah. So basically, that actually scene wasn't in there. That was when we were in the editing room, me and my editor was like, I think we need to add that shot. And so it was in the original script, but we just ran out of time. And so I got a couple of my friends together to meet at a park down the street from my house to shoot that. And I really wanted it to show that, you know, this has been a continued process. I didn't really think, and I did keep it all as females as the thieves. I feel like a lot of times we have in the world of, I don't know, I guess statistics, most men end up being serial killers, and most women, I wanted to have this as the women to be the villain in this, but I guess the most they've done is they've been stealing packages and just getting their heads chewed off. But I wanted to show that this has been a series of, a continuation of people stealing, and the next head, that the continued head process of, you know, the head is continued through the package basically, to the next person. So yeah, I guess that's kind of, I don't know, I just wanted to show that it's been a continued process through all these women.
And it's interesting. So is the head from the woman who got her head replaced now going to be in a package that somebody else picks up, and then it's going to replace her head?
Yeah.
I love it. It's sort of a commentary on like the damage that's done when you transgress, I guess, against societal norms. Like, there's sort of a unspoken pact about, like, you know, like, that's my car, don't touch it, and like that's got my name on it, that's for me. And like most normal people wouldn't consider like taking that for themselves. And when you kind of go against that societal norm, you inflict damage on the person who, I mean, if you've ever had anything stolen, it feels so violating.
The worst, because I'm like, I promise you, you don't want what's in that package, like, you know. And then
right.
So, yeah. So
You're like, there's screws for my proprietary part that makes my dresser larger.
Part you never are gonna ever use. So like that. So I just it was a really fun project. It was the first script I wrote during the pandemic, so, and it was my first little like intro into the film industry, so as a first-time director. So yeah, it was really fun.
Amazing. I love it. The thing about that makes the reason why Brian and I love independent film so much is for this reason. Like, people are just kind of telling their stories from their heart, and like just using whatever resources they can scrabble together to make them. They're just so there's something that comes through that process, I think, that is just much more pure, I guess, a pure expression of art and story. And on that note, I'm gonna go back to the Amalist crew and ask you another question about your horrible creatures. So so you have these two characters in the wasteland and an impossible tree. Sorry?
It takes place in the Northwest Passage. The ship in the Northwest Passage.
Gotcha.
Sorry.
Okay. No, it's fine. So it's kind of like the same setting as like The Terror, the TV show The Terror.
Yes.
Similar.
Yep. That is the exact same, the same location. Different reason though.
Okay. And then there's this like tree that to me looks like those exhibits that you see where they plastinate like organs and veins and like the cardiovascular system, and then they scrape away everything else, so all you're left with in this floating tank is like a bundle of like red and blue things that look like twigs. So I'm wondering what your inspiration for like the impossible tree, like how did you come up with the look for that?
Reference photos of the vascular nervous system in the brain.
That was almost exactly it.
This thing is it has a unique parasitic symbiotic relationship with vertebrates. It in the story, it is helped evolve the vertebrates to prey off them, but it grew to really like pain and causing these things pain. And so our ability and evolution of pain and understanding pleasure and avoiding things of pain, the idea is it hunted fishes and it hunted these things. That's why it has crab legs, because it has adapted some of the things, the designs that it built as it grew up. And it's been growing up, following us as we evolved toward the sun. And then when we left the ocean, it can't move in that direction, so it just grew straight up out of the ocean looking for where, you know, the things that ran away from it. So yeah, it is definitely a thing that's made out of pain, and our adaptation is that we have some like of pain and we enjoy pain in some sort of way. And the lead character, he is drawn back to this thing because this horrible pain, and he leads his friend into his own death because he craves this pain that this thing can give him.
Okay. I noticed the connection between the amulet that he's holding and then the book that he sees. Like, is that meant to be? Yes. I guess I'm asking you to like explain your movie, but is that meant to be his?
I asked Sarah about this because Sarah hadn't seen the full version, and I asked her, and I guess it's completely lost. It's blood. This tree's blood is that stuff hardened, and so when he squeezes it at the beginning and he kind of winces, he's tasting a little bit of the pain. And so that's what he's going back for. But it's, yes, the book there is supposed to be, and oh my gosh, I hate movies that use books for lore. It's just so lazy as it, but I mean it's a film race, and we made this amazing little book. We like, you know, painted it and had all these details, and Miranda Taro, who was working with us on this, she illustrated every page of that book. So there's actually these beautiful little illustrations and stuff. It was so fantastic. So I was okay with that. But it's the idea of this expedition that he was on, and he got away, and he's coming back and finding out what they had figured out about it. And now what's left of them is just the bones, because it's already consumed them.
Okay.
So yes.
Horrifying.
Yeah.
I asked you this when, I think all of you guys were in Portland at the in-person festival, and I apologize if I've asked like the same questions again, but this is for our streaming audience who hasn't necessarily seen us on the stage. But with your films, because you've done a number of stop motion short films for either just as entries or for the Lovecraft Under the Gun film contest, and they all have sort of a similar, not feeling, but like they have a similar thing element to them, that where they feel kind of like they could be in the same universe, or that they're the kind of the same lore. And curious if there's something that you've consciously done to tie them together, or if that's just me projecting my own interpretations on your work.
I think that's a total accident. I think.
Yeah, none of these films. I mean, the film that we're currently working on, this larger project, there's a couple films that are connected just because we'll be working on something and then Lovecraft will come up. This Ecstasy at the End of the Sea started out as this other film that we're working on right now, and they are loosely related, but none of the others I feel like are in the same universe.
They're a lot. They're very similar.
There's always,
but there's a similar feeling. Both different vibe, if that means anything. Right? The horror ones are the horror ones, and the silly ones are the silly ones.
But yeah, I mean, I think there's themes of loneliness and isolation in several of our films.
I
But I
noticed
don't-
in almost all of them, really.
Yeah.
So
Something horrific, and then, you know, hubris. But yeah, yeah, normally I'm not considering them as part of the same universe, no.
Okay. Thank you. For Robert, with your film, the element of the wife who then we discover like doesn't know him or he's been stalking her. How did that kind of come into play? Because it seems like there should have, it seems like there should have been more of a interaction. Like, why? I guess my questioning at the beginning when he is, I guess it sounds like he's talking to her on the phone, but he's really just talking at the phone, and like he's really trying to like improve himself and
Right. She's the
kind
she's
of
like the
surmise
beacon.
that she,
Yeah,
yeah,
she's
like we
like
kind
the
of surmise
beacon.
that she
Sorry.
took him out of the house or no, that's okay. So I just was curious for your story writing purposes, like kind of how, like what the role was with the wife figure.
Right. He projects the life that he believes he should be having and that he's trying to get back really onto her. And he really is kind of stalking her. Like he's at her house, he's, you know, in his mind leaving these voicemails, and he's just like a stranger to her. Like she's seen him. Like I think part of the backstory that Ellie, who plays Maria, and I came up with is that they've crossed paths. Like she works at a bank and she's seen him before and stuff like that. So, but they don't have anything like that. There's no relationship there at all. And in my mind, it was more about Kenneth Cadillac, as they call him, his spiraling out of control. Like he put all this on her. Like this is why he was doing this. Like why he was selling his plasma, and that turned out to be, not real. Which I think is more of a metaphor for a lot of the things people do when they put a goal on something or someone, and it's the idea of them or the idea of that accomplishment. Maybe it's a house, maybe it's the white picket fence, and it ends up turning out to not be what they thought, or completely false altogether. So, and it's just such a gut punch one too. So, gotta be mean to your main characters.
It really is kind of like oh gosh, like this guy really doesn't have anything to look forward to.
Oops, sorry. Yes, no, it's the facade that he was hoping to push for is just not there, and it's such a downbeat for him in the movie.
Man, bummer. So I'm gonna switch back to Neighborhood at the End of the World. Trying to give you guys a little equal time as much as possible. So with the Neighborhood kind of being, you mentioned how you have this sort of abhorrence of like everything being this homogeneity of everything being the same, and then at the end we get this like kind of wider view of the whole neighborhood where it seems like everybody in the neighborhood has now been replaced, and they're all kind of like standing uniformly spaced with similar khakis and button-up shirts, and like kind of looking like the perfect families and things like that. And I'm just wondering if there's an element, because it seems like in a lot of the films we got this year that had doppelgangers or parasite or something in them, it seemed like they then became better, like the people became better in some way. And I'm wondering if you see it that way in your film as well.
I I love that you say that, because I actually see it exactly that way. For me, one of the things I like to say about it is that I always I started from this idea that thinking about the so-called missing link between us and our ancestors and so on, like the different hominids and whatnot, that this was a sort of evolutionary leap where this is a better and improved, essentially human race, that humans have had their opportunity and we kind of made a mess of things, and the next step was more or less getting rid of us and giving the Earth another humanoid species, essentially, that, yeah, like you said, was a better version. Because throughout the film, all the violence is perpetrated by the humans. So as much as it seems like the doppelgangers are the evil ones, they don't actually seem to do any of the violence. And so that was always present for me, absolutely, that this was, again, like a kind of better evolutionary leap forward. Yeah. I absolutely could expand on that because even more. Like, I'd love to keep rapping on that because I've thought about it a lot, about what it could possibly and what it could possibly mean, and there's even this thought that, again, without giving it away and taking the piss out of anything, that final scene in a way was almost like a plant life taking energy from the sun or whatever it might be, you know? So yeah, so it's nice to hear you think of them as better because I think I saw it the same way.
I mean,
Yeah.
like they're stronger, they're, I don't know,
They're
more
cleaner, they're
self-assured,
fresh, they're
cleaner, yeah,
yeah,
more presentable.
yeah,
And I do love the moment where she realizes that like she just tortured her husband. She's like, I'm sorry.
yeah.
As though it was as though those words had never passed through her lips before.
Yeah, and I probably shouldn't say this broadly, but yeah, it's a joke. It's a running joke with the crew and myself and John and everybody that, you know, it ends where um essentially this woman holds herself accountable and finally apologizes to her husband for what she just put him through, you know, and it became this running joke for us. But yeah, that was always intended to be somewhat of that lightening of the tense horror that we just watched. That was always meant to be somewhat of not a joke as such, but um, yeah. So I think, yeah, I think I appreciate what you're saying about it because I'm on the same page as you. I agree of a reading for it.
And how did you decide to have the son named Jetson?
Um, I
Like
think it comes from
who?
first thought, best thought. I think I don't know why exactly. When I was writing the treatment and I just kept writing, I write everything by hand. So I just let it go, and whatever happens, I'll either fix it later or I'll run with it. And for whatever reason, she did say to her son, she said, Jetson, come here, or whatever, in that first treatment, you know. And I don't know why it appeared, but I loved it. I personally just came from nowhere and I loved it. And I think perhaps subconsciously, again, this idea of like an advanced version of human or whatnot, that it sort of made sense just to play with that name. And also as a kid, I loved the Jetsons. So yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, of course.
John John Thomas Dixon. I can't help but say your whole name because that's how I was introduced to you at the festival. So that's how you are in my brain now, is John Thomas. But I'll never mix you up with another John Dixon. So with Patch, we had talked a little bit about at the festival about the creature and kind of what it represented.
Yeah.
Because you don't really get it like a great look at it in the film, and it's kind of in the dark and it's kind of wet, like it looks like it's just soaked in blood. Can you talk a little bit about like the impulse behind that, behind the monster, and like what it might represent to you?
Yeah, I think the entire film sort of started out of the, I don't know, the creative challenge of it's not easy, but it's a lot easier as a reader when you're reading to, like, when you're reading horror, Lovecraftian horror, and you're seeing a creature described to you line by line, where you can get elements of like a lizard's tail or like a calf's hoof, where it's like, oh, I can see this amalgamated creature in my mind bit by bit. On film, it's such a different beast where like you really have to play with what the audience can't see, and you have to play with sound a lot. And I think that to me was the biggest challenge is, well, first, we don't have the budget to make a creature or multiple variations of a creature. So it's like, how do we use light and use shadow to really highlight what we want the audience to see, and then use sound to sort of fill in the gaps. But yeah, in terms of the story itself, I feel like the setting of a slaughterhouse is really interesting for sort of the guilt around killing animals, especially when that's your day-to-day job, or it's just the monotony of we have to kill this creature. And sort of the opening of the film kind of lends itself to that too. It's you can see a little bit of guilt, I feel like, in Martin's eyes before he sort of comes back to, oh, I've got to do the job. And I think it all kind of boils down to, at its core, like this creature is almost representing that guilt of a slaughterhouse. It's representing all those creatures and all those things that Martin has felt guilt for while working at this slaughterhouse. And it's really fun playing with, like you had talked about earlier, about like close-ups to cutting wide. I think it's really fun playing with Martin's perspective, looking down on the ladder at this creature, because the darkness does it's like even what you had just said about it seems like it's soaked in blood. I think everyone has a different experience watching it, or has a different take on what kind of creature they see, and I think that's really exciting. And it sounds like it's a little bit of a success based on my original intention of like, I don't want anyone to like come out of that movie having the exact same idea of what this creature might be. So yeah.
Nice. Well, good job. Well done. And with that, I think that we should probably wrap up. We've been on for a good while. And I know that I could talk to each of you much longer about each of your films. They're just like incredible, really great shorts block. I know we say that about all of our films, but like the way things kind of came together in the grouping was just really interesting for me. And I just want to thank each of you for taking time out of your evenings to come talk to me and give our audience some more insight into your films. And before we sign off, can we go around and just have each of you say where we can find more of your work, if you've got a website, or if you've got an Instagram or Facebook people can find you on. And I'm just going to go around how you are on my screen. I know it's not how everyone's screen looks, but I'm going to go with the Amelis first.
Max, do you have a social media or something you want to?
Yeah, I have a social media page with animation. A lot of the animation that we've done for our films in the past. That one is just Max _, Tikhonov, my impossible to spell last name, _ANI, Annie. So good luck. Didn't really try to find it.
Well, I'll type these out and put them in the show notes too. So if you're watching the video, you can go look at the description. It'll be there too.
Yeah.
And we're under Monsieur Cyr official on Instagram and YouTube. It's part of a YouTube channel with our older stuff. And on the YouTube channel, we're trying to do a lot of behind the scenes, like the music, the art, how we do all this stuff. So hopefully that's fun for people that like the stuff that we're doing. So yeah. Did you have anything you wanted to pen?
I write everything down by paper and pens.
You'll just leave it by people's doors.
I just kind of like wrap it up in a nice little envelope and slip it in somebody's door.
You know, send it by pigeon.
And so I give you a little.
Shane, how about you? Where can we find you and more of your film work?
Yeah, we do have a website, which is skinnerstreetfilms.com, which is our website. So that's our production company that we started a couple of years ago. And we've posted most of our videos there, and if not, they're coming. They just haven't been posted as a streamer, but and also I'm on Instagram under Shane Peter Day, which is my name. Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. Because as similar to the other fellows there, that I write everything by hand. I write everything by paper and pen, so it's really difficult for me to commit to putting myself out there on social media. So, but those two places where you can find me for sure.
Okay,
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah.
Robert Flowers, how about you? Where do people find you on the internet?
Instagram is usually the best place. I'm at Robert Flowers TV. It's a picture of me playing guitar with my dog. And there's BTS, some 3D animation that I do that I'm currently doing. And yeah, just all, good fun, filmmaking fun. So
Awesome. John Thomas Dixon, where do people find you?
So you guys can find me on Instagram at John Thomas Dixon. It's all pushed together, no spaces or anything. At Instagram, and then also the production company me and my friends just started is Mesmer Film. So there should be some more films coming out on that Instagram page as well. And that's just Mesmer Film squished together as well.
Cool. Alexandria, where can people find you and check out more of your work? Oh, you're muted still.
Sorry, my dog was like playing so much in the background, like with this squeaky toy. So I need to mute this because everyone's talking. I'm like, oh my God. So I mostly go through my Instagram, which I actually finally changed the handle because I was like, I cannot have my original Instagram handle anymore. This is ridiculous. So it is Visual Rascal on Instagram. And then I started a film production company this past year, so that's still in the works, and that's going to be Visual Rascal Films. And so that's my email, visualrascalfilms@gmail.com. And then, but the best way to contact me is definitely through Visual Rascal on Instagram right now. Yeah.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Right. Thank you guys so much. Again, thank you for making such a great film and for attending the festival and being here with me right now to do our streaming Q&A. It was really real pleasure to talk with all of you and just get a little more insight into your films. And we can't wait to see what you guys are doing next.
Thank you.
thank you so much. Can't wait to come back again.
Bye.
All right, thank you.
Bye.